Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening to this podcast. This is official episode number one of the TeamGrit podcast. I would like, and we would like as a team, to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to listen to us. It's just something that's super important to us, and we're excited with what we got. If you could follow us along at TeamGrit Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, soon to be Facebook, and our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll also, our producer, camera guy, he's only 17 years old, so he probably doesn't believe in Facebook, but we'll have a Facebook page.
Do you have a MySpace too?
I have MySpace right there. He probably doesn't even know what MySpace is.
It's true.
So, I do want to, real quick, we didn't introduce him in our introductory episode. Young man, Devin Lyles, student of mine at our high school. I don't want to say our school too much, but I won't mention names a whole lot of students, but Devin is a big part of TeamGrit. He's got big dreams of being a filmmaker and producer in his future. And given our setup here, you guys saw us last week on the kitchen table with the ice ball microphone, and now we're in our makeshift studio, and week to week you're going to see improvements, and that's kind of what TeamGrit's all about, right?
That's right.
Update. Thanks, Devin. Thanks, Devin. We're still working everything. We're working out all our kinks and stuff
that
too.
On the post.
Update. So this is a kind of an extra special week. I didn't really think about this. Today is my last day of our Christmas break. I will be back at school in the morning. I don't have to be there as early. I don't think our meetings start till 8 a.m. I usually have to be there at 7, as I am a foolish 0-hour teacher. It's at 6:50 call time. But the best part is I can start my day off with a good workout and be at work, and it's go time. So I'll start school. This will be a chemo week. So tomorrow morning I'll head to work. Laura will head over to Children's Mercy, which is a children's hospital in Kansas City, and they've worked out treatment with us through St. Jude. So it's kind of really cool, but kind of want to give everybody just kind of what it's like. And I've done this so many times, I don't get quite as emotional, but now that there's lights and cameras and people in here, I may. So, bear with me. Because when I'm talking about this, I think about, am I missing those key moments with my son because I have to work and mom's at the hospital and she's got to deal with everything, and that seems super hard. So tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, Laura will drive into Kansas City. They'll get checked in, and they'll take blood and his ANC, and all of these different blood levels to make sure he's even eligible to receive the treatment. Tomorrow he will get 4 different chemos. One will actually have to be put in through an NG tube. So after all of that goes, and before anything can start, they have to strap Grit down to basically a table and put this tube down his nose, and it's incredibly horrible. It's not fun at all. Now there's no harm to him, but you know how little kids are when you're strapping them down to do something that they don't want to do. It's kicking and screaming, and it sounds like death is coming. Then they give him all of the anti-nausea medicine, and we've been going through this process for going on over 2 years. This will be our second start of year number 3, basically. And he has to take a steroid, and that first day is nuts. Like, he'll come home and he'll be dragging and he'll be tired because he was just strapped to a table and had 5 hours worth of chemotherapy put into him, anti-nausea medicine, and then for some reason right around dinner time he just becomes the Incredible Hulk, and he's just like, "Ugh!" and running around, and it's like if we let him do whatever he wanted, the TVs would be ripped off the walls and doors would be open and there'd be glass broken everywhere, and you'd come home and it'd look like you've been robbed, but there's a toddler on the floor just going. So the very first day is super rough. And Laura will come home. They'll send us home with chemotherapy, actually. And then Laura will give him the chemotherapy in the morning through the NG tube, and then she heads to the hospital. So you get that hour break because that chemo has to sit for an hour before you could administer the next one. So it really saves us a ton of time. When we first started doing this chemo, he couldn't keep the chemo down because we were just trying to feed it to him. And he'd throw up and spit and throw up and spit. We'd have to start over. And that first day we did this, we were down in Memphis at St. Jude in the medicine room. I think we were in the hospital for like 14 hours trying to go through this chemo. That was day one. So it's pretty hectic. And then it gets easier every day. The meds kick in. But it's, you see him. That's why TeamGrit exists, because except for about an hour or two that nobody gets to see, he's full go. He's 100% energy, 100% what his name is, persevering, and having the will to keep going despite the obstacles. And we'll go play and whatever I can do to tire him out so he goes to bed. And it's hard on everybody, including his sister, who will join us at some point today. Ella, like we start to think about, and she's pretty tough. She's a lot tougher than I give her credit for, especially when it's just us two. But I also, I want her to believe that she's tough, and I think that's how my dad toughened me up. It was. You got to learn how to deal with your bumps and bruises on your own. But that's not good for an 11-year-old girl, But she misses out on that important time with her mother that she used to get all the time. And Grit may not have needed it so much if it wasn't chemotherapy or going through this treatment, because I could do more. But those two... they've been on this ride. It's ride or die for those two. They've been through it the whole time. And while Ella and I's journey's been different, I had to drive back and forth to St. Jude every week for 2 years. A year. Ella came with me sometimes. And between me, Ella would stay at her grandparents or with her dad. And it was tough, and you don't think it's that bad because you know that she is with people that love her and want to take care of her, her dad and grandma and grandpa. But that mother-daughter bond that she needs at this time in her life is just gone. And I think about that all the time because during that year, our relationship was practically none. And then, when we go to Memphis, things would be fine. But how she feels, she's trying to make up for lost time with her mom, and it was almost impossible to do. But, she's tougher. She'll be better for it in the long run. It's going to suck until this is all over with and we can take a deep breath and maybe go to a beach somewhere. But it's a tough journey, man, and I have been so reflective lately going into this because I knew we were going to do this, and I'm pretty private. I talk to you about everything. I talk to Jason and Ari about everything. I have a handful of friends like that, the coaches that I'm with every day. But to undress yourself in front of cameras and tell the world because you know that it's important. And our very first guest, who I'm super excited about, he's a guy that makes you feel like, hell yeah, this is important and this is why I'm doing it. And he's the reason why we're running this freaking marathon, or I'm running this marathon. Like Steve's done 50. I can do one, right? So that's kind of my motivation behind all that. And fast forward to Friday, the NG tube comes out. Chemo lasts about 3 or 4 hours, and we try to start our weekend. And during that week's time, I'll have to take care of Ella. I'll have to pick her up from school. Football training starts. I'll go to that as much as I can. But the kids know, like, I give those kids and their families so much time during the season and the summer. I get a little bit of a pass on the off-season stuff. And I'll also have to call 2 basketball games on Tuesday and Friday. So I'll call the girls' game, the boys' game, both days to make extra money to make sure we keep the roof over our heads and the lights on in here. And lo and behold, whatever comes in between then. And on top of that, I'll get up at 4:30 to be at the gym at 5 and bust my ass to be done and ready for work at 6:50. And that is a snapshot of what our week looks like, chemo week.
Thanks for sharing that. That's pretty intense.
So,
I think that's something we should do on a week-to-week basis. If that's okay with you, Nolan, how about you check in with the audience, let us know what's going on with Grit, with the family, how things are going. I think that's important for you all to be able to share your journey. But more importantly, just in the last week, since we dropped our podcast 0,
right.
I've spoken to family members and friends who have basically relayed to me, like, it is isolating. And you feel alone sometimes as you're going through this, and you maybe even feel like you're the only person that's going through it, or I don't know, like to connect with people and to say you're not alone. I'm feeling this. This is what I'm going through. It's hard, but here's how I'm coping with that. And I'm hoping that this podcast could be a really good venue for you to share that, but also to let other people know they're not alone through this. We're all Team Grit, but we're team everybody that's going through this. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And then, like you said too, we have Steve Sodergren coming up in the second segment of our show today. He's a marathoner. He's got a fantastic story we're looking forward to sharing with everybody. On a week-to-week basis too, we're tinkering with format some, and this is subject to change, but Ari is going to be sharing with you, I think, something that the number one thing that we've agreed that people tend to ask is, how can I help? What can I do to get involved, be it through St. Jude's or just in the community or whatever? So Ari is going to give you an idea every week or every show of something that you can do at home to help. And we're going to also practice what we preach. We're going to do something to give back every week and share how we did. So I'm excited about that personally. It's much easier to sit back and ask other people to do things, but to actually get involved in your own community and step up to the plate, that's where I'm at with that, and I think we all are, and looking forward to sharing that. And then she's also going to share her journey as she prepares for a half marathon this summer. So fitness goals, updates, all the trials and tribulations that come along with that. So to keep people at home motivated, sometimes it's nice to follow along with someone else's journey and to motivate and propel you into your journey. And then Nolan's looking forward to sharing his personal fitness goals, which he chuckles about because it's a tough one, man. You're preparing for a full marathon in December. The whole purpose for this podcast and all the fundraising we're going to do. Updates on that also from Ari on a week-to-week basis. As we know more, she's going to keep everyone up to date on that. But his journey to prepare for a full freaking marathon. You're crazy, dude. Why?
It was, so I met Steve, who, we'll bring up in a second, but I met him through the Rock Chalk Round Ball, or he volunteers for it, and I like to talk to people, especially the people that are given to us, because I can't, I can offer them a smile and a conversation and a hug, and I need a hug sometimes, and I just started talking to him, and I've always been around, what do they call it? They don't call it, what they call people who run, like long distance runners and marathoners and triathletes. Yeah, but they call them, they're kind of endurance athletes. Endurance athletes. Okay.
You might thesaurus how quick.
I've been around endurance athletes. My father was a race all of his friends, He's got friends that have been on the Olympic team. That's kind of the community I grew up in, but I was the big kid. So I went to the races. I went to the triathlons. I did some Iron Kids triathlons when I was, nothing, but, I was 12 and I don't know how much I weighed. But then when I was 14, I was 6 foot tall, 185 pounds, and growing. So endurance, no. And I got fat, super fat. This is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. People can be body positive. But I was fat, out of shape. I was doing stand-up comedy. I was traveling around the United States, eating fast food, drinking sodas and other sodas.
Yeah,
adult sodas, staying up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And it was hard on my body. And I got up to 306 pounds. And at that point, I had a good doctor that said, dude, if you don't drastically change your lifestyle, you're going to be dead by the time you're 35 years old. And I'm 37, so I'm past that. I went back down, but then going through this process of cancer treatments, people would say stuff to us like, I'd come home. Honestly, here's the ugly truth of it. I would stop at the Quick Trip in Belton, Missouri, and pick up a 12-pack of Coors Light, and I'd drive home. I wouldn't drink and drive, but I'd drive home and I would try to wind down and I would drink that. And then I would eat something heavy and carby, and I got back up to just around 300 pounds and started having anxiety. And I started exercising and helping, but then one day it clicked, and I've been no days off every chance I got since Lent started last year.
Well, congratulations. And speaking of that stuff, we're doing Sober January, right, Eric?
Yes. Yeah, dry January.
Dry January.
Try to get try to get a jump start, on being healthy and running, and it helps definitely with your endurance. So I know that for me, people were asking, again, my biggest thing, how you can help. Well, when I started getting involved with TeamGrit and Grit, the biggest thing, like when I was signing up for events and stuff, is people ask me about Grit's story. So I think that's huge for us to let people know, because people are constantly asking me, how's Grit doing this week? How does he feel? And so we're definitely going to update everybody on that. And I know my friends and family are huge on doing that. We are going to get you guys involved too with the health aspect of running. We're going to try to find a good app, something that you guys can be on this journey with us, to log your workouts, show us what kind of miles you're running. I need that. I need to be motivated. So the fundraising part, we are going to start next January 13th. We're going to have some good updates on how you guys can get involved, what that's all going to entail. In the meantime, I'm just going to be running, and I'm super excited for our guest today because I'm going to need some inspiration along this journey, and he's going to be a big part of it. So,
well, there you go. Without further ado, let's take a little break, and we'll bring Steve into the studio, and we'll chat with him.
All right.
Good job, guys.
Boom.
Oh, I'm sweating on that minute. God, you guys give me like 2 minutes. Like, go!
I'm looking over there. He's like,
hey, welcome back from the break. That was our first official break, too. Our first official refill on coffee for the show. So we're back. And as you notice, we have a new person here at the table with us. This is Steve Sodergren. And he is a marathoner. And when Nolan first texted our group chat the other day and said, we've already got a guest, and we've hit it out of the park on our first one, we were all freaking out that we got Steve to join us on this first podcast. And it makes it real. So Steve's here, and he's wonderful, and he's got a really cool story to tell. So Steve, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and we've got some questions for you we'll pepper you with here.
Well, my name is Steve Sodergren. I'm from Topeka, and on November 3rd, I ran in the New York City Marathon, which was the 50th of the states, which was a journey that was 15 years in the making. And I was sharing with you earlier, I had run marathons for 10 years before I actually figured out what the purpose was. And so anyway, in 2014, I became a St. Jude hero. I cringe a little bit, though, when they call the runners the heroes, because to me, the kids are the heroes. But anyway, so for the past 5 of those 15 years, I've been a St. Jude hero, and I've used my my running as a platform to raise money for St. Jude. And so people ask me, what are you going to do after you complete the 50? And
I asked you that yesterday.
You did ask me that the other day, and I have some ideas. I haven't really officially figured out what I'm going to do with it, but when people ask me, have you stopped running? My answer is, have they cured cancer? And until they cure cancer, I'm still running. So I don't have any official plans yet. I think I might be running in Washington, D.C. in October for number 51 at the Marine Corps Marathon, but beyond that, I just want to continue to be a St. Jude hero and keep supporting all the pediatric cancer causes that I can get involved with. So it's an honor to be here with TeamGrit.
Well, for me, it's awesome. We met, like I said in the previous segment, we met through the round ball 2 seasons ago, and we just started talking, following each other on social media, and the day you went on your first run, which I'll pull these out. Steve goes by the hashtag or the organization Running For, and he has one of these for, how many of these do you have?
5 years worth, 300 days a year roughly, so I would say about 1,500 daily runs that are devoted to someone who's been affected by cancer.
And the day I saw Grits on there, I lost it because I didn't know you. We briefly had passed and talked, and it's so hectic and overwhelming during that round ball week. You don't get to sit and take a deep breath, but we started communicating through the posts, and every time I saw that run for Grit, man, it got me, skinned me right now. And then the cancer had come back last year. And it happened again, and I just thought about all these people that have done this for us, and you were a big one of them. And the St. Jude hero thing resonated with me, and that you were training for marathon number 50 in 50 states for beating pediatric cancer under the name of Running For, and I thought to myself, Steve's ran 50, I can run 1. And you, sir, you, sir, are the reason why I'm doing this. So,
I'm honored to hear you say that, Nolan, and I would do anything I can to help you reach that goal.
Will you run for me?
Running for goal.
I will run with you.
Running with goal.
We can go running together, and we can train together if you wish.
Okay.
And in fact, I'm considering maybe being in Memphis myself in December. So that's a very strong possibility.
Oh, and for you being our number 1, our inaugural guest, I'm giving you a TeamGrit hoodie.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored. I will wear this proudly.
Right. Go run in that.
I will go running in this, definitely. And I will blend in when it snows. Thank you.
It gets dirty very easily.
Yeah, I can see that.
Get you some
Thank you
good
very
whitening
much.
detergent.
Very much. I appreciate that. And I will make it official by putting it on.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm new to your story. I mean, I've heard of you, but I'm just fascinated in learning. What got you started with the Running For and with St. Jude's, and what was the initial, springboard into that to run for people for pediatric cancer?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, my original reason to start running really was just, as I look back, it felt like selfish, personal reasons. Nolan has mentioned how he had dealt with anxiety. Mm-hmm. I had the same situation in my life. I was slightly overweight as well. All I did was play softball on the weekends, and that was just a reason to get together with friends and have adult beverages together. And so, and I went and watched my wife run the 2003 Chicago Marathon, and I was just it hooked me, the whole atmosphere. and the way people supported each other. And I just thought, I really need to do something like that, and I really needed a goal like that. And so the running started out just as a way to deal with some of the anxiety that I dealt with in my life, and I still do to some extent. And, so for 10 years I ran 31 marathons, didn't really know why, didn't really have a purpose. And then finally in the fall of 2014, I was on a training run one Sunday morning, and I was running past our neighbor. Her name was Morgan Cotman, and Morgan was dealing with a brain tumor at that time, and I had coached her in youth sports and knew the family really well. And just as I ran past their house and saw the sun come up that morning, I thought, this is what I could do. I could try to use this in some way as a platform. And so that was the genesis of it right there. And so then roughly about 6 months later, my mother was also diagnosed with a brain tumor, and her name was Myra. And so my family has the acronym May You Rise Above, which is her name, Myra. And so, it made it even more personal at that point. And that's when I decided to become a St. Jude hero, actually. So I used to take my mom to her appointments, and I vividly remember sitting in the waiting room one time with her at her appointment, and we saw all these kids coming in, and my mom just turned to me and whispered, "They're just babies." And how long does this podcast go? and so, that just reinforced for me. I had started being a hero, a St. Jude runner, I'd rather call it, before that time. But when my mom said that to me, I just knew that was really an important thing. And she said that, they're just babies. They deserve a chance to live and have a full life. And so that just gave me extra purpose with it. So my mom battled her brain tumor for 14 months, and she passed away in July of 2016. And so then that following December, in December 2016, I went and ran the St. Jude Marathon in Memphis. And you talk about being extra special. We got to tour the facility the day before the race, and the race runs through the campus. So you'll be able to experience that, and that's just something I still get goosebumps when I think about. And so during that race, there was a young girl named Abby who was with her family at mile 20 cheering on the runners, and she was sitting there in her wheelchair just cheering for everybody and slapping high fives, and something pulled me to her, and I decided to just stop and talk to her and her family. So this is some of the promotional material that St. Jude has put out about Abby. And so during that just very brief visit at mile 20, we visited for just a brief time. We took some pictures together, and her mother got a hold of me afterwards, and so we've kept a relationship going. And Abby was kind enough to send me her autograph. And I don't know that you can see it here, but it's got her autograph, and it says, "P.S. You've gotten my second signature." So I'm the proud owner of Abby's second signature ever. And as a result of that, I've been doing this for a while, but for all of my marathons, I run with a shirt that's got the signatures of a lot of the people who I've met throughout the journey who have been affected by cancer. And you can see that Grit, they've signed Grit's name here, and of course I traced Abby's autograph right there. So this is, when people ask me, what do you do during a marathon when you get tired? My answer is I look down. And it all goes away. Mm-hmm. There's no more fatigue. So anyway, long answer to your short question, but these are the people who motivate me on my shirt and in my heart, and they're with me every step of the way.
Wow, that is a really good long answer to your short question, and I think you got Grit's first autograph.
Yeah,
Was that Grit's
first one?
Yeah, Grit's first one. I need
That's
to say
a collector's
something.
item.
It's kind of funny because I'm about to cry. That is intense and touching and wonderful. And wow.
Jimmy V says it. Everybody, you should laugh and cry every day, and I pretty much do that at this point. Maybe there's some days where I don't laugh enough, but crying every day at some point.
We need that catharsis sometimes to laugh.
Very much so.
Wow. Okay, so you've done 50 marathons in 50 states. You said your 32nd one was the first one where you were running. So walk us through 32 through 50 as you've done that. Any notable highlights or moments or things that you're especially proud of? Anything that maybe not so, or that just a run that went bad? It's an interesting story. Like I'm not a runner, so this is a world that's unfamiliar to me.
I share with people you never know what to expect when you toe that starting line because there are so many variables. There's the weather, there's whether you're hydrated enough. You just never know, and I think that's part of the allure to me is the uncertainty of it. I think
you don't know where the pain is going to come from every day too. It's like here.
Exactly, it can come from anywhere. I suppose a few that stand out. I was in Idaho and. I did not hydrate enough, and it was hotter than I had realized too, and so that really was actually probably the only one where I was concerned about actually not finishing. And so when I got to mile 20, the body just said no, and fortunately my wife and kids were there, and so my daughter walked with me for a mile while I drank and tried to get rejuvenated, and it was my slowest one, but I didn't really care at the time. I just wanted to finish, and so that was one that was pretty touch and go. Prior to New York, my slowest one was actually in New Mexico, and it was at high altitude, and again that was a variable I had not accounted for. We had only been there for one day, so I didn't have enough time to acclimate to the altitude. And plus the course was one of the most hilly ones I'd ever been on. And there was no problem finishing that one, but interestingly, it was my slowest one, but I actually won my age group.
Hey.
And the reason being because there were two old guys there, and the other guy crashed. So, I never have to tell people that part of the story. But,
Good thing we're not recording. So.
That's right. That's right. So
Nobody's going to see this. Especially the guy that crashed.
So yeah, exactly. So the funny thing was that it was my slowest one, and yet it was the only one where I ever actually won an age group or anything.
Wow.
But the Boston Marathon, of course, has got so much tradition, and that was a spine-tingling experience. Just I'm kind of a running nerd, so I like the history of the sport and everything. And so Boston, it's the oldest one, and there's just so many things that you read about, Heartbreak Hill, and all these different parts of the course and things that occurred in old races. So that was quite an experience to be there for Marathon Monday in Boston. And then of course, to finish it off with New York, I picked that one on purpose because that's just 50,000 runners going across the Verrazano Narrows Bridge together. It's just an unbelievable experience, and the whole city just comes out to cheer you on, and they take great pride in that there too.
Have you been to New York before? Or was that your first?
I had never been to Manhattan before, so and that course runs you through all 5 boroughs.
That's cool.
So you start on Staten Island and you go through all 5 boroughs.
Did you hop on any subways or anything?
I did not do that. No.
You just hear you hear those stories about how people cheat, but when you're running for kids with kids,
you're not going to cheat.
Yeah, so we were talking off the air about that too. So you've touched on like coming first in your age group, as for the New Mexico Marathon, all that. But then you also have mentioned like in New York. Tell us about that, like that one, stopping and talking to people and why you chose that, and then also how you ran that race compared to other ones. Maybe it's the better way to ask the question than you could answer that. But, why did you choose that one, and how did you run that race, and what did that look like for you in that day?
So the majority of the marathons that I ran, I traveled by myself. Well, I should say about half of them I had somebody with me, my wife or my kids. We would sometimes make vacations out of it. But I had a good 20 or 25 where I traveled by myself. And the point I'm getting to is that New York was very unique because I had about 23 friends and family who had come just for the occasion. And so I had told them all before the race, and it's even funny to call it a race actually, before the run, I just told them, the clock will not matter. And and it turned out to be that was the case. I was 2 minutes slower than in New Mexico, so that was actually the slowest then, it turned out. But yeah, I had, there were so many people there who either had family members who had fought cancer or had fought cancer themselves. And so I really made a point to stop whenever I saw them on the course and take pictures and just soak it all in. And, the atmosphere, when there's 5 people deep on the sidewalks, total strangers who've stood there for 3 hours holding signs just to cheer for you, you feel like you want to let them know how much you appreciate that. So I really took my time and, plus I'm getting older and slower anyway. So I just decided that I wanted to really make the most of it and make it a celebration more than anything else.
Watch you Facebook Lived a couple things, and that was really cool. I was watching the whole day.
Yeah.
I know. As a runner, I was watching you live, and I was checking in. And the first time I checked in, and you had your phone up, and you were just like kind of taking around. And I thought at first, what are you doing? Why aren't you running?
Right.
And then I got it, and you were just taking every moment in of that, and it was so incredible. And we were talking earlier about how just a 5K that I won my age group.
Right.
Again,
Yeah.
not super proud,
That's okay.
but I was, and it does it means something to you when you have that moment. But by far my proudest 5K, obviously, is when I did stop 50 yards before the finish line, grabbed Grit, and finished with him. And so after I took a second to be like, why aren't you running?
Right.
And then I just thought how amazing that you do not care about that time, and you are taking every single moment in, every guest that came, every visitor, and every friend and family member that came with you. It was beyond inspiring to me. Definitely.
Well, I had been dreaming about that for years. I can't tell you how many random Tuesday afternoon runs I would see New York in my mind. And so I just did not want to waste a second of the experience.
What are, going on the experience side of it, what were some of the highlights for you? I know you talked about historicalness of the Boston Marathon, but was there a lot of that in New York too, or was it just about making this a memory?
Well, like I said, you go through all 5 boroughs, so you really get a flavor of the whole city. When you go through Brooklyn, and there's the Orthodox Jewish community there, and they even told us before the race that those folks would just walk right through the course, as you're running, and that kind of thing. And so, but that was great. I loved it. Like I said, it didn't matter to me if I had to slow down a step to let a person through, But so that was a big part of the flavor, and we ran over all the bridges that connected all the different boroughs, and going through Harlem and Central Park, and so really it's a great way to see a city. Even if you're just a tourist, to walk as much as you can. But I can say the same for so many of the other cities I've been to. You don't very often get to run across the Golden Gate Bridge, or go down the Strip in Las Vegas, or run through Wrigleyville in Chicago. All these different places, the lava fields in Hawaii.
That's all I think about. I think about Hawaii every day for at least 5 minutes, though.
Be prepared for heat.
Well, I'm just talking about
that'll be different than December in Memphis.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll get to run down Beale Street and then go back afterwards.
Right there. Well, I just think about Hawaii, not running it. Just we haven't been able to go on a vacation in forever now, and so like I get vacation envious. So people say like Hawaii, or guys go elk hunting and stuff. I see them trekking through the mountains, and I get excited. Like I close my eyes. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I've never been to Hawaii, so I don't know. But yeah, that's all. I was just jealous that you've been to Hawaii.
Well, and I would also suggest Alaska. That's another beautiful place.
Been there.
Go to Anchorage was where we ran that one, and that was just beautiful.
Perfect weather, probably.
It was great. Yes.
So coming from a coaching background with Nolan and I, we're familiar with the Friday Night Lights and the game day thing, and it's race day or run day, as you said. Sometimes it's the run day. But practice is almost always where the games are won and lost and all of that. So walk us through what it's like for you when you're training, what gets you through a tough run, and also if you're willing to share what's going on with your training today, right now, where you're at with it. We were talking again off air about,
Right.
like you're taking a break from running. So,
Right. Well, so early on, being a newbie, I did it by the book. The typical training program, at least at that time, was a 16-week program, and you would run essentially 5 days a week, with one of those being a long run. And I would usually do my long runs on Sunday mornings. Those would start out as 10-milers and work their way up to about 20. And so I did it that way for probably the first 10 or so, and it, it was great, but I will say there was a bit of burnout after a while, and I just sort of learned that it wasn't fun anymore. And so I decided that even though I wanted to continue running marathons, I was going to deviate from the typical way you would do it and just make it fun. Mm-hmm. So for me, and pure runners would scoff at this, but my longest runs anymore are anywhere from maybe 6 to 10 miles. And my typical day would be a 6-mile run, probably 5 days a week. I don't think that you should do that when you train for Memphis. You should probably be a little more stringent about that. But yeah, and so we had mentioned earlier, actually I'm on about a 2-week break from running right now because I had some kidney stone surgery on Christmas Day, actually. And so
Merry Christmas.
This is the longest break from running I've had in 15 years, and I really don't know what to do with myself. But I am itching to get back out there this week and hopefully get back on the road. So I play it by ear. My biggest thing is to avoid injury, and so as long as I can keep running and it's fun, and as far as race day, just show up and somehow you figure it out, and I know you will.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say I'm so worried about injury. That's my biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For multiple, because I don't want to impede the progress that I've already made for my health.
Right.
I've gotten plantar fasciitis real bad, which is why I haven't started really pounding the concrete. But I was much heavier, and now I'm getting down to it. I'm still heavy. I'm about 20 pounds away from my desired weight. I would love to get there because my wife will think I'm hot every day. That's the biggest reason why.
And she doesn't now.
I don't think so, but I'm sure she does.
Not every day.
Right. So I've considered. I don't know if I'll make you my coach. That's maybe what I'll do.
We can do that,
or talk to people that have done these. I've honestly considered just getting in the best shape I possibly can, and making sure I'm putting in 5Ks to 10Ks every day, and then on race day just gutting it out. And if I get injured, I can handle that and then move forward. I don't know if that's the smartest approach. I just thought, because I'm gonna cross that finish line, whether I have to chop off a leg or beat a kid up for a scooter. I mean, I'm gonna get across that finish line. Not a kid, an adult. I'll beat up a teenager.
Well, and I would tell you the thing I learned the most is to be patient with yourself, because it takes a lot of steps to get there, and you can't get there all at once. And my kids make fun of me because I make everything into a running analogy, but I've thought a lot about this. It takes 34,000 steps to finish a marathon.
Ooh, I can count.
That's a lot.
For me, it does, roughly.
That's the
and every one of them is equally important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You can't take out a single one of those steps. Mm-hmm. And I compare that to what we're doing with fundraising for cancer research. It takes every one of those dollars to get there. But the nice thing about that race to beat cancer is it's a relay. We can work on it together.
Right.
Now this race here in Memphis, you'll be on your own. but be patient with yourself, because it takes time. And I think what happens is a lot of people think that they can go out just one time and run a 6-minute mile or whatever. And that's not how it works. And, it took me in 2004, when I first decided to do this, I had a 2-mile block, and it took me a month to build myself up to where I could run around that 2-mile block.
Yep.
And every night, and I went out at night because I didn't want anybody to see me. That's how insecure I felt about it. And but I would try to go one more mailbox every night.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
just make it a small
That's
goal.
awesome.
So one more mailbox, and that night I'll never forget. The night I finally ran the 2-mile block, I paused and tapped the stop sign at each corner as I turned, just as a little celebration of the little milestones. So that would be another thing I would tell you, would be to celebrate those milestones as you go. Of course, in that case, it was a half milestone, but
Hey.
Take your time. Take your time. You can't do it all at once, and that's the same thing with that marathon.
Well, that's a great note to go out on for the first part of our interview here. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be back in a second.